This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Good morning, Rabbi Say. So the topic of today's Shiur is it permitted to say the name of today's holiday? No? Are you allowed to say what we call Xmas? Are you allowed to say it out? Christmas. We spoke about by the Tainus whether there's a custom that we don't learn the night of Nittel. Some people have that custom, some people don't. So traditionally, many Rebbes, and by their Hasidic courts, they don't learn. Instead, they tell jokes. So there's a joke, a traditional joke, a Masorah joke that they tell about the nuns when they graduate the monastery. So what do? It's time they have to get married. So who do they marry? Who do they do get married? You know who they get married to? JC, right? Not Jason Kidd. JC, right? They get married to the Yashka, the Mamzer. That's who they get married to. And they have a big chasana, and they figuratively marry the Yozel. So anyway, at this chasana, there's an Alta Yid sitting there, and he's enjoying himself so much. He's eating that matches herring, and he's smacking his lips. He loves it. And everyone's looking at him, what in the world, where did this guy fall in from? What's he doing at the wedding of all these nuns to the Yozel? So until finally one of the nuns gets up the courage, and he says, "Excuse me, sir, what are you doing here? Did you pay for it?" He said, "I'm here mitzad the chasan." Okay. Anyway, so what does it mean? What does this word mean? Christmas. What does that word mean? Well, yeah, so Christ means the anointed one, the Mashiach. MAS, or really MS, means mass, means a festival. So in other words, it means a festival in honor of the Mashiach, of their anointed one. So the question is it permitted to say that? So we come to a more basic question, and that is, are you allowed to say his name? Right? He has two names. Right? The first name, J-E, not J-E-T-S, I know. J-E-S, right? J-E-S, right? That's the first name. And the second name is C-H-R-I-S-T. So the question is, are you allowed to say that? Now, the first name is his name, right? When he was born, I don't know who gave him the name. The father, right? Supposedly, there's no father. So whoever gave him the name at the bris, they called him Vikar Shema B'Yisrael Yashka, right? J-E-S-U-S. That's his name.
Maybe his mother's husband.
Yeah. And
right, his name was given in Hebrew, so
whatever, Yeshu, right?
So I'm saying, I've heard lots of people say Yeshu.
Okay.
Why would it be more of a problem in English?
Well, not everybody will say Yeshu. Well, we'll have to see. The second part of the name, C-H-R-I-S-T, is a different question, right? The J is his name, C is an appellation, is a description. So we have in the Torah tells us, whatever I have told you, you should guard yourself. V'shem Elohim acherim lo yisazkiru. The name of other gods you should not mention. Lo yishama al picha. They should not be heard on your mouth. So here the Torah is telling us we're not allowed to say the name of another god. And the Rambam says, Hanoider b'shem avodah zara, someone who makes a vow in the name of avodah zara, the hanishba ba, or someone who swears in the name, loike shnayim, gets malchus twice. Shenemar, loike, he gets malchus. Shenemar, v'shem Elohim acherim lo yisazkiru. Okay, so if someone takes a vow or an oath in the name of a foreign god, so you get malchus. Echad hanishba ba la'atzmai, whether you swear on your own, v'echad hanishba ba l'gai, or whether you swear to a guy. And not only that, you're not allowed to cause a guy to swear by the name of his god. That's why the halacha is, according to the Gemara, you're not allowed to do business with an akum. Why? Because you can do business with him, that's going to end up, you're going to have a court case, and he's going to swear by the name of his god. So the question whether nowadays that applies, but in any event, you're not allowed to cause a guy to swear by their god. even just to say the name of an avodah zarah, shaloi derech shvua, not in a manner of an oath, aser, right? Someone gets angry, right? And they say the name of another god, it's an Isser Dairaisa. And not only is it an Isser Dairaisa, right? It's an Isser Dairaisa. And if you swear in it, you could get Malchus. We could whip you. So what does this mean? Let's say you have a guy, what's that guy's name from Rochester that found some pebble on his travels? Joseph Smith, right? So, so here you have a guy, he wasn't a god. He was a regular Joe Schmo, right? So, are you allowed to say his name? According to what we're learning in the Rambam, you can't even say his name. You can't say the name of a god.
Well, does it make a difference if he only claims to be a prophet and not a god?
Oh, so yeah, a prophet is not.
I think that's the case by that religion.
Oh, okay. They didn't teach that to me in yeshiva, but that's good. So let's say you have a guy. His name is Beryl, and Beryl decides he's a god. He comes into shul one day. He gets an aliyah and he makes an announcement. I want everyone to know that I'm a god. So you can't say Beryl's name anymore. So let's take a look at the Hagois Maimonides. The Hagois Maimonides is a Rishon, and he's a commentary on the Rambam, and he qualifies the halacha of the Rambam. And basically what he says is that it's not prohibited to say the name of an individual just because that individual has proclaimed himself to be a god. What you're not allowed to do is, you can't say the descriptive word that describes him as a god. In other words, let's say Beryl says, from now on, don't call me Beryl. Call me Beryl, your highness. So, you could say Beryl, but you can't call him Beryl, your highness. Why? Because that name is describing his godly attribute. So what you would not be allowed to say is, your highness. You could still call him Beryl. No.
He can't be a king?
But since he intends that word should describe his divinity, so that's a description of his Elokus.
Did Paro think that Paro implied he was a god, or?
I guess not if Moshe Rabbeinu was saying it. But that Paro was just the name of an Egyptian king. The same way Avimelech was the name of a Philistine king.
But he thought he was a god.
Yeah, he thought he was a god, but I don't know if Paro is a description of his divinity. So that's what the Hagois Maimonides says. Kasav Re'im. The Re'im writes, She'ein aser el Hashem shenitein la l'shem elokus. It's only aser to say a name that's given to describe their divinity. Shemashma elokus. Aval shem hedyoitos. But a regular, ordinary name, Pagain, Shemois Ba'alma, Keshemois Hagoyim. Let's say you have a guy, his name is Luke, and Luke decides that he wants to be a god. You could still call him Luke. You could still, Luke, could you shovel my snow? But you can't call him, Luke.
Skywalker.
Yeah, if he thinks Skywalker is a description of his divinity, then you can't call him Luke Skywalker, right? Afal pisha eloka, kivan shebazeh Hashem ein bo elokus va'anos. V'gam lo nitein lo l'shem kach mutter. Why? What's the reason? What's the reason you could call them by their name, but you can't call them by a name that denotes divinity? Says the Hagois Maimonides, v'taima d'chsiv v'shem Elohim acherim lo yisazkiru. The reason is because it says the name of other gods you should not mention. B'shem elokus hikbidakasav. The Torah is only particular that you don't use the name that describes divinity. The regular name, right? So if you want to go into the God business and you want people to be able to continue saying their name, so you tell them, don't call me, right, Nate the Great. Just call me Nate, right? The Great, you'll have to leave out. So if you want to go into, if you want to become a god, so this is what you need to know what to do. Don't tell people to call you by your name that describes divinity. So halacha l'maisa, let's get right to it. Let's, cut right to the chase. Are you allowed to say Yashka's name? Are you allowed to say Christ? What would you say?
No, the first name?
So the first name, that's his name.
Yes, and the second name, no.
The first name we would say, you should be allowed to say, that's his name. The second name, that describes a certain divine element to him that you're not allowed to say. And that's the halacha. The halacha is to say the second part of his name is an Isser Dairaisa. That's pretty severe. You can't say the second part of his name. You can't. So that's the psak of Rav Azriel Hildersheimer. Rav Azriel Hildersheimer, who is Rav Azriel Hildersheimer? He was born in 1820. He passed away in 1899. He was a younger contemporary of Reb Shamshon Raphael Hirsch, and he studied under the Aruch Laner of Yaakov Ettlinger. He also studied under Chacham Barnez. Today, if you have some free time, do research on Chacham Isaac Barnez. Very interesting personality. Chacham Isaac Barnez. He was a student under Chacham Isaac Barnez. And Rabbi?
The envelopes for tzedakah appeals.
From Isaac Barnez?
The organization.
Maybe, okay. Check him up. So Rabbi Azriel Hildersheimer writes, I'll prove to you you're allowed to say Yeshu, or I don't like to say his first name in English. I don't know. I don't say it. But he says, I'll prove to you you're allowed to say it, because if you look in the Gemara, it says Yeshu. It says his name. So obviously,
Why is it better?
I don't know.
You think it'll be worse because it's Russian?
I hear. Maybe because that was his name. That was his name.
So in English, it's the name too. It's not
I hear. I don't know. So to say his name, yeah, there should be no difference. I'm not saying there's any difference. To say his name, the Gemara says his name. The Gemara Nizkar Shmai HaPrati. I'll tell you why there may be a difference. The Gemara mentions his specific name, Avoloi Hashem HaMorgel Ata, but not the name that people call him today, Shehu HaTakas Milas Mashiach, which is, in effect, the translation of Mashiach, right? Christ is the translation of Mashiach. Uve'emes me'olam tama karasi. I have always been astonished al hamakilim b'shem zeh, on those who are lenient by saying his second name, u'machmirim b'shmei hapratu. The truth is, if you go around the Jewish world, people are more quick to say Christ than they are to say Jesus. That's just the way it is. And says the Rabbi Azriel, it should be just the opposite. It should be just the opposite. It should be the opposite. That is what? When it comes to Christ, it's an Isser Dairaisa. When it comes to Jesus, that is permitted. That's permitted. However, he writes in Oishei that there is already a long-standing Jewish custom not to say his first name. And therefore, to say his first name, it's considered Midas Chasidus.
What was it written?
This was written somewhere between the years 1820 and 1899.
Is that custom still there because it's used?
No, I think it's a very strong Jewish custom not even to say his first name. Many people, they say the Yozel, Yashka, the Mamzer. What?
What's Ozo mean?
Ozo?
Yeah.
You mean Bozo? We don't call it Oso Ha'ish? What do you mean? What's Ozo?
I thought you said Ozel, or you said Osel.
Yozel. Yozel. What does that mean? I don't know. It's like it's a mockery, you know.
Okay.
That's we don't say. We'll get to that, right? But he does add you can't deny what exists in everywhere where Jews have been scattered. That this matter, saying his first name, even though we've said that it's only considered a saintly practice not to say it, God-fearing people don't say his first name. This pious practice is no worse than something which is absolutely permitted, that some people have a custom to prohibit. There's a concept in the Gemara that even something that's permitted, if in a certain location God-fearing people don't do it, you can't do it in their presence. It's not considered proper. So therefore, says the Rebbe Azriel, that even though technically speaking his first name is permitted, there is a certain custom not to say his first name. So halacha l'maisa, his second name, you're not allowed to say. His first name, technically speaking, Meikar Adin, it's permitted to say, but it's considered midas chasidus. The better things to say than to say his first name. So coming back to the name of today, yeah, we won't say Xmas.
Are we talking about, again, just to understand, the name in Hebrew, you also midat chasidus not to mention? I heard all the time that it's referring to a klala, not a real name.
Yimach Shemai V'Zichur, but that was his name. That's his name in Hebrew.
We never found any source of this name to somebody else.
Well, right, it's a Hebrew name for Jesus.
Yud Shin Vav. It's
Yud Shin Vav.
But
look, the Gemara brings it, and when you learn the Gemara, you read it, you say Yeshu. But to go around, mentioning his name, you're better off
Wasn't he born Jewish?
He was born Jewish and he died Jewish.
I know. So didn't have a Hebrew name or
His Hebrew name was Yud Shin Vav, or something similar to that. Something similar to that. Yeah, he was definitely Jewish. He was definitely Jewish. But if you look at the early accounts in the New Testament, his early followers were illiterate Jews who couldn't read a word of Hebrew, and they didn't know any better. They were not intelligent or literate people. They were not literate people. Anyway, but today is not a study in ancient Christianity. But the point is, halacha l'maisa, what's important to know is don't say his second name. His second name is an Issa D'Oraisa. The first name, Midas Chasidus. Midas Chasidus. Now, what about to say the name of today?
Coming from the second.
So we would say, which, it should be usher to say the name, right? After all, Christ means the anointed one. MAS is a festival in his honor. It should be a Issa D'Oraisa to say it. But I heard from Rabbi Binyamin Luban, who's a Rosh Yeshiva in Miami, who asked Rav Scheinberg, Zechatzak Levrach, and he said that today it's permitted to say the name of the holiday. Why? Because it doesn't mean anything anymore. The day just means it's a secular day where you go to the store and you shop, and then you eat until your stomach is full, and you also v'yesh oimrim sheyesh chumra af lios mashukar, to be drunk. So it's not a religious holiday anymore.
That's in English, but what is referring to Hebrew?
I don't know. Is there a Hebrew name for it? What do they call it?
Mem Vav Lamed Daled. Like Molada
like NATL, like the day of his birth. I don't know about Hebrew, but that's less problematic because you're not ascribing any divine force to him. But Rav Scheinberg said that Me'ikar Hadin is permitted to say the name of today's holiday, but again, there is definitely a minhag in Klal Yisrael to avoid saying the name, whether you say Xmas or Kratzmach. What Pshan Kratzmach is? Kratzmach means scratch me. It means, you're itchy, so you say Kratzmach, means scratch me. Xmas, yeah. So anyway, it's not usher to say it, but by the way, what's Pshat in Kratzmach? The Gemara says, late sanus is usher. Right? Kol late sanus asir levad me late sanusa d'avodah zara. So when it comes to avodah zara, it's actually a mitzvah to make a mockery of it, and that's where this comes from. So it's not usher to say the name, but it's midas chasidus. Now I just want to talk for a few minutes about perhaps the Musar aspect of this, and that is, why does the Torah say that you're not allowed to say the name of an avodah zara? Why? I mean, we don't usually darshan the reason for the Torah. I mean, if the Torah says you don't eat treif, you don't eat it. Where do we come to darshan the name? Or we have a famous pasuk that says, "V'shem Rishayim Yerkav." Right, the name of the wicked should rot. So Gemara gives an example, very interesting Gemara. Look on your sheets, number 5. Mai v'shem Rishayim Yerkav. What does it mean? The name of the wicked should rot. Amar Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Elazar said, "Rak vivos tale b'shmaisan." Rust should go up on their names. In other words, they should fall into disuse. If you have a great grandfather, Chas Hashem, you have a Russia, you want to name your kid Stalin. Not a good idea, right? Not a good idea. You want to name your kid Nimrod. Not recommended practice, right? Adolf. Yeah. Ahmadinejad. It's not a good name to give your kid, right? So why? Because we want these names to stay on the shelf and get rusty, fall into disuse. Why? We don't want to use their names. So the Gemara asks, what do you mean we don't want to use the names of a Rasha? Masav Ravina asked, I'll tell you an example of a righteous woman who gave her child the name of a Rasha. The Gemara says, B'doyeg ben Yosef. There was a kid, Doeg ben Yosef. Shehinichai aviv ben Katan. The father died, and he left over this little kid, Doeg. Now we know the original Doeg was the advisor of Shaul. He was a Baal Lashon Hara. He was a Rasha. He has no chelek in Olam Haba. Right? Le'imai, right? Ben Katan le'imai. He left over a kid, Doeg, to his mother. B'chol yom ha'isa imai moidedasai b'tfachayim. The mother was so righteous that she weighed the kid every day, or measured him through a fist. V'nosenes mishkaloi shel zav l'beis hamikdash. And every day she would donate his measurement to the Beis Hamikdash. When the enemy prevailed, tafchasai, she slaughtered him. V'yaleha koinen Yirmiyah, and about this woman, Yirmiyah lamented in Taichalna Nashim Piryam. Look what happened. Alas, women had to consume their offspring, Oilele Tipuchim, the babes that they cared for. And then the Ruach HaKodesh said, in other words, a baskel came out. Why did this happen? It was a punishment for killing Zechariah, who was a Kohen and a Navi, in the Beis HaMikdash. So the Gemara says, you see, you're allowed to give a kid the name of a Rasha because his mother gave the kid Dayigal. Says the Gemara, Chazi Maisalak Bey. Yeah, she gave him the name. But look what happened to him. Eventually, she had to slaughter him. Why did she have to slaughter him? Because she gave him the name Dayeg. So the Bali Musar explained, Rav Zaychik authored a work called Sparks of Musar. They translate into English. And he explains this Gemara al Pi Musar, that every time you say a word, it has an effect on you. Like Rav Victor Miller used to say, a parent would, run after the kid, I'm going to kill you, right? Says Rav Miller, this parent has just come closer to killing their child. Why? Until now, you were 1,000,000 miles away, and now you're 999,909.9999999 miles away. Every word you say has an impact on you. So when this mother would dress the kid in the morning and say, Dayeg, I love you, Dayeg. So in the back of her mind, she made a connection to the Rasha Dayeg, and subconsciously, she was thinking, I love the Rasha Dayeg. And that's how eventually she became so cruel that she slaughtered the child. That's how the Bali Musar explained this Gemara. Why? Because everything you say has an effect on you. You think you're just saying, meet me on the corner of that, of that Beis Avodah Zarah. The Avodah Zarah, we're not going to say his name. The guy with the big belly and the big belly button, right? We're not going to say his name, right? Meet me over there.
You want to say his name?
No, you're not.
Is that worse than...
I don't know. I'm not a bucky in that form of idolatry.
He's not
He's not looked at as any religious figure.
But the problem is that you mentioned the first one. You say Kadosh.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just joking around. But if that's his name, then you could say his name. If that's some kind of divine word. But in other words, when you say, meet me at the corner of the Yozel, and if you're going to say Yozel's name, in your mind, you're using Yozel as a point of reference, a point of that's important, and in your mind, slowly, you consider that more important than it should be. I'll give you another example. The Gemara says in Chagiga, Tezvav Amud Beis, another Gemara about Dayeg and Achitayfel.
It's down of Corpus Christi.
So there, it's just you could say the same thing. Let's say what's the name of the people who believe in him?
Right.
Christians.
You're allowed to say that?
So, are you allowed to say that? So there, the same way we say you're allowed to say today's holiday, right? You're allowed to say today. Why? Because it just means a day.
It's a proper name.
It's a proper name. So we said it's a midas chasidus not to say the name of the day. Why? Because there's a custom not to say it. If there's no custom, you never found anybody who's ever zahir not to say the name of these people, not to say the name of the notzrim. There's no such custom. What?
In Hebrew, it's easier to say.
The notzrim. That's what I'm just saying. To say Yashka's second name, that's an Issa D'Oraisa. To say these words, Xmas, or the Christians.
Why would Rav Scheinberg's words require you to the second today? Today it's like you don't even know what it means.
I think people know. They know. They associate it with him.
Yeah,
Many people don't know Latin.
people don't. They have no clue what that word means.
But
Jews don't know what it means. God, you may be true. But why wouldn't
okay, you could say, look, the day definitely became secularized because it's a shopping day, it's a holiday, it's a legal day, it's a legal holiday.
I also have a minute that they say don't
Wow,
name,
but,
they add a curse into it.
So the religion.
Wow, but in Europe is
The
also.
whole religion is secularized.
Yeah, it's because it's a Christian country. In Europe, the same thing. Here, it's twisted a little bit.
So maybe that's why we say it. Maybe that's why we say the name of the religion. But to say his name, I think his name still retains a certain degree of.
A Spanish mechanic, his first name
Is Yashka,
Jesus in English.
right?
Jesus, or whatever they call him.
You have in mind kiss like a sus.
But that's a Greek name.
Okay.
Say among some Christians, the word Xmas is vernacular. It's It's a not pleasant word.
It's derogatory.
Yeah, that's the word.
Okay. It wasn't meant as a compliment. Okay, let's see one more Gemara. Let's see, the Gemara says in Chagiga on Tezvav Amud Beis, it says, Amar Rabbi Ami, Tlas Meya Boi Doeg V'Achitophel B'Migdal HaParech Ba'avir. Doeg and Achitophel were such big Talmidei Chachamim that they had 300 halachos about a tower that floats in midair. Now, the simple meaning is, there's no such thing as a tower that floats in midair. But they were such big Talmidei Chacham, there are 5 pshat in what this means. Either it means the letter Chaf in the Sefer Torah, the Vav on top of the Chaf, should be tilted that way. It looks like a tower floating in midair. And they knew 300 halachas about the Vav that tilts to the left. It's a tremendous Talmidei Chachamim. Or they knew 300 halachas about Migdal Bavel, Rashi says. Or they knew 300 halachas about a closet that could float in the middle of the air, even though it can't. But they, Lu Yitzoyer, theoretically could. Or they knew 300 halachos of, if what would be, they knew 300 ways how to suspend a closet in midair through kishuf. They had to know kishuf because Talmidei Chachamim have to know kishuf in order to be mechayiv someone misa if they do kishuf. So anyway, says the Gemara, they were such big Talmidei Chachamim, and nevertheless they have no share in the world to come. Why? Says the Gemara, Zemer Yevani Loi Pasak Mipume. Doyeku Adoimi did not stop singing Greek songs. So what's wrong with singing Greek songs? So Rashi says that at the time of the Beis Hamikdash that was destroyed by the Greeks, it wasn't appropriate to sing Greek songs. But the Marsha says that the Greek songs contain Greek philosophy and culture. And therefore, ultimately, despite the fact that Doeg Adam was the greatest Talmid Chacham of his time, the songs that he sang had an impact on him. So what would we say about the songs today? What would we say about pop culture today, which is full of immorality? Yeah, and for a Jew to be humming, Xmas carols about the birth of the Yozel, and yeah.
You don't have all the songs today, the Jewish, are taken from
Okay, tunes are different than words.
Plus the words, if they say "Let it snow, let it snow."
If you know the song,
So it depends. It depends. Look,
it isn't really an Xmas
there is a major discussion in halacha whether you're allowed to take non-Jewish tunes and put Jewish words to it. You're right. If it makes you think of the words.
Because it's everywhere.
No,
every Jewish song has a version.
No, Shlomo Kalbach, his original tunes, the Vekas original tunes.
1 in 500.
What?
1 in 500.
I don't think most people know the origin. And if it's
But the idea is that it influences you.
The songs influence you. It would certainly be highly inappropriate for somebody to be humming Xmas carols or.
Growing up listening to any of the rock and roll music on the radio, I don't think I ever was able to follow words of these songs. You have no clue what they're saying. You can't understand a word they're saying.
But every 10th word is nos, da 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 da, nos, da 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 da, more is nos, da 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 da, kill someone, da da da, and then nos.
That's about 25 years ago.
Look, even
But the song we sing by Hanukkah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's mamash it's like a Christian song.
It is?
Straight up Christian.
I don't know.
Originally, it was a German drinking song.
Really? Yeah. I hear it. The point is that the words, the focus on the word, you're right. If you know the original German Christian drinking song, and when you sing Malasur, you're thinking of, downing a few loads of beer, then maybe you should sing a different niggun. Maybe go to Avram Fried or something, It depends.
Nobody thinks of it, of course, that's the whole point.
I didn't know.
Somebody did some research on this.
All right, look.
What's the conclusion? Better to live next to Ishmaelim or next to the Nazratim?
Better to live Mea Sha'arim. So that's the point. The point is that it's not just some kind of Gezeres HaKasav, some kind of straight up law. You're not allowed to say the name of a god. The point is what you say has an influence on you. This mother, the reason, according to the Gemara, why she ended up slaughtering her son is because she named him Doeg. Doeg eventually had his Yerida. Why? Because he sang improper songs, to the point where the Gemara says, as he was learning Gemara, It says books of Minos were falling out of his pocket. He had apikarsa books falling out of his pocket. Right? Why? Because of his song, because of his nigunim. Okay, but let's end off on a good note. The Gemara says about Rabbi Shiur ben Chananya, who was one of the main Talmidim of Rev Yochanan ben Zakkai. Says the Gemara, Ashrei yoiladatai, fortunate is the one who gave birth to him. And the Bartanura says, why is that? Says the Bartanura, look at number 8. She caused him to be a chacham. The Bartanura says, Hashem shehi garma lo sheyehi chacham. She caused him to be a chacham. Why? Because from the time that he was very young, she would bring his crib into the Beis Medrash, and she would say to the chachamim, please pray for this child that he should become a chacham. And not only that, says the Bartanur, from the day he was very young, she did not take out his crib from the Beis Medrash so that the words of Torah would enter his ear. So I'll ask you a question. You think he understood when he was a baby one word of the Shiur? Right? You think when he was 1 year old, he heard, machlekes abayis, you think he understood? I guarantee you he had no idea what they were talking about. You think when he was a month old, he chapped, the chakira they had in the lumdus of Shemeach, avad, that he did not understand one word. So what was the point of it? What was the point of bringing him into the Beis Medrash? The point is, even something you don't understand, it enters your ear, it has a hashpah. Everything has a hashpah. Everything you see, everything you hear, everything you say, everything you see has a hashpah, whether you understand it or not. You listen to non-Jewish music, and even if you don't understand, you listen to Jamaican reggae, even though you don't understand the words. But it has an impact. It has a hashpah. You listen to Zydeco from New Orleans, it has a hashpah on you.
Gangnam Style.
What? You don't even know. Baruch Hashem. Everything you have. I'll tell you a story from Baruch Ber, a very interesting story. It's brought down in the Sefer Hegyonos. It's in my notes. It's not in the back of the sheet. The son-in-law of Rabbi Baruch Ber was also a co-Rosh Yeshiva in Kamenetz. His name was Rav Moshe Bernstein. So anyway, he eventually founded Kamenetz in Eretz Yisrael. He's the author of the Sefer Dvar Moshe, and tells the story how Rabbi Baruch Ber, after he came to Eretz Yisrael, he said that it took him many years to purge himself from a certain incident. And that is when he came to America. Rabbi Baruch Ber came to America to collect money. So some Baal Batim bought him an apartment. And he didn't want to refuse it, because he felt, they went out of their way to buy it for him. But he felt so much tsar, because this apartment was opposite the home of a priest. And in the priest's home, on the outside, there was a shasi v'arev, a cross. And every day, he had to look at this shasi v'arev. He had so much tsar, Rabbi Baruch Ber says, that it caused him physical pain to the point that it took away years of his life. Because he had to look at the cross. Until he heard a story about the Chassam Sofer. I'll tell it to you very briefly. Basically, one time the Chassam Sofer was traveling with his Rabbi, and they were on the road, and the horse broke. One of the two horses broke its leg, and they put a donkey onto the harness, and all of a sudden, his Rabbi, Rav Nosson Adler, jumps out of the carriage, and he starts doing, a little jig. He's dancing, and the only thing is, he's a very old man. So Chassam Sofer says, what are you so happy about? He said, it's the first time in my life I had the opportunity not to violate the Avera of not traveling with a horse and a donkey attached to the same harness. So the first time I had the opportunity, so he's dancing to show his simcha. So Baruch Ber says, when I heard that story, I felt a little better. Baruch Hashem, I had the opportunity to be faced with the challenge of not straying after Avodah Zarah when I saw the cross, but, and I had simcha that I didn't stray after my heart when I saw this cross. But you hear this? A tzaddik, like Rabbi Baruch Ber says, that literally his life was shortened by the distress he had, that he had to see something that was improper. Right? Remember, we learned from the Rambam says in Parsha Mishnayos, technically speaking, you shouldn't even look at a church.
Why?
Because it has an effect. Everything you see, everything you say.
By mistake.
The Rambam writes openly.
If you don't look at it.
It would be better. We're better off not even looking at it.
Shouldn't look at other people? Shouldn't let Goyim.
You're not looking at Russia. You're not looking at Russia. I'll just start with me Russia. You're not looking at Russia. It's halacha even. You can't gaze at the face of a Russia. Why?
A priest? Oh.
You can't gaze at the face of a Russia. There are stories about Gedolei Yisrael who would not meet, who would not even look at leaders of the state of Israel.
That's extremely.
Anyway, moving on to a next. But the point is, certainly, this is on a high level. On a lower level, to look at certain things on a certain screen that's in the shape of a box, that portrays images of immodesty and immorality and murder, it has an effect on a person. There's no question. There's no question it has an effect on a person. A person has to be careful, not just what he eats, but whatever he takes in. Whatever he takes in. By the way, the Tefillin Shel Rosh have 4 parshios. The Tefillin Shel Yad have 1 parsha. Why? Tefillin Shel Yad is on the hand. The hand has one of the senses, the sense of touch. The head has 4 senses: sight, hearing, taste, smell. The point is, you have to watch out not just what you eat, but what you look at, what you listen to, what you say, everything. All a person's senses have to be. Person is very sensitive. The neshama is more sensitive than the eye, right? You know what happens? If somebody bangs their hand, it hurts for a moment. But if you get even a speck of dust in the eye, it's very painful. The neshama is very sensitive, so you have to be careful what you allow entrance into the human soul. Rabbi, have a wonderful day.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.